When you stop chasing an avoidant ex, you are going to notice these 5 things happening. The first is that you are going to come to the realization of how emotionally draining the relationship was. You have probably gone through a roller coaster of emotions while being with this person. One minute it seems like things are working out and you guys are heading in a right direction, and the next it seems like you say one thing and then they push away, and it becomes this constant battle that you are having to deal with where you feel like you're walking on eggshells. You feel like you can't openly express how you feel about things, because if you do, it's just going to lead to bigger issues, and you try to do whatever you can to avoid from those things happening. Going through this is such an emotional turbulence on your mind and on your body. So when you stop chasing this person, you really start to realize how drained you really were, how much this has been putting such a toll on you emotionally and causing you to change your moods a lot of the times because they've had such a grasp on you when it comes to this. The second thing is that you are going to gain so much clarity into how they have played a major role in why the relationship didn't work. You have probably been manipulated to make it seem like you were the reason why the relationship failed. They have probably either done this directly by telling you or indirectly, but either way, when you're dealing with an avoidant, you tend to take on most of the burden because their reaction is contingent upon you. And when you get close, all of a sudden they are going to have a reaction to where they push away and they become cold. And your mind, whether you know it or not, is internalizing that as, oh, this is my fault. Like, I opened up too much. I went too fast. Like, this is on me. So you naturally start to take on that burden that you are the issue and you're the reason why the relationship isn't working. But in actuality, this is on them. They have this attachment style. They, for whatever reason, are this way for something that went on in their life. And it's not their fault in the sense that a lot of times this comes from something that is outside of them. But at the end of the day, it is their responsibility to try to seek some type of help to work through that, whether it's a therapist or even just hearing you out and understanding how you are feeling about this, and having a space to allow for you to express yourself and them slowly beginning to work on that. But up until this point, again, you have never really stepped back and took the time to assess the situation and to really understand that they are the one that are fundamentally driving this and making this go awry because they aren't willing to do what is necessary to work through this. The third is that you are going to start to heal from the emotional cycle that you go through with an avoidant. You've probably experienced this push and pull, which is basically when you start to get close to this person, they pull away, but then when you start pulling away, they get close, and it drives you nuts because you can't tell whether or not this is going to be one of those cycles or this is essentially them finally doing what is needed to make the relationship work. Anyone going through that is going to have such a hard and difficult time because there is no sense of security within the relationship. You guys don't have a baseline. It's just constantly going high, high, low, low, higher, lower. It's just constantly doing this up and down and back and forth. And when you stop chasing this person, you begin to realize how much they were affecting you in that way. When you're in it, you don't necessarily recognize it in the beginning because you're so just caught up in trying to make the relationship work, trying to figure out what this person needs and how you can, make it work, because at the end of the day, you loved this person, right? So your brain can't focus on looking at other things because you were so fixated in that area. But once you start to stop chasing this person, you get that space away so that you can start to realize how much your mood has been changed, how much the negative emotions that you've been experiencing were contingent upon this relationship with this avoidant. And by you deciding to not chase this person, you give yourself the space to see this for what it was. The fourth is that you start to either regain or recreate your boundaries. Chances are your boundaries have diminished significantly because of just being in the relationship with an avoidant and what the emotional turmoil can be with somebody who isn't willing to do what is necessary to try to work with you. And you don't realize it because it doesn't happen all up front. It happens with little chipping away. And those chipping away at those boundaries that you have ends up adding up to bigger things where the boundary doesn't exist anymore, and you don't really realize how much you are allowing to happen that you wouldn't have allowed to happen prior to getting into a relationship with this person. And when you stop chasing that avoidant, you begin to start to rebuild your boundaries again. You begin to understand what is important for you and the line that you are not going to allow somebody like this to cross. And the fifth and most important thing that you are going to see is that you are going to regain your identity back. You have probably been torn down at this point because you have gone through, again, this emotional cycle. You've most likely have experienced some form of manipulation to tear you down, to make you feel like you are the problem, which is causing you to have anxiety, is causing you to question everything that you've known about yourself, and it can do a number on yourself and making you feel insecure about who you are. A lot of the times too, avoidance kind of transfer that attachment style to that partner because you have constantly been trying to avoid making them trigger, and by you avoiding triggering them, you're almost, basically becoming them, because you have to know what their triggers are, and those triggers are them avoiding being close with other people, avoiding the opening up, and you adapt to that. No matter what relationship that you in, you guys are going to it's a transference of different ways of thinking, of being. Like, this is what happens when you're with any partner, because that's what it is. Like, you guys are so intimate with each other on so many different levels that you can't help to almost mimic that person, and to some degree. And this especially happens with an avoidant because, again, you are doing this to try to avoid having them respond this way, because nobody wants to go through that. Nobody wants to experience, someone that they love pulling away from them when you are trying to be vulnerable and open up. Like, it doesn't feel good. And your mind's number one job is to protect you physically, but also to protect you emotionally. And that is a threat to your mind when somebody rejects you. So by that, you've almost in some sense become an avoidant yourself, into some degree. And by stopping chasing this person, you are beginning to redefine who you are again, or regain that person that you are. And you are beginning to figure out things about yourself again, things that you loved, being more vulnerable, whatever that might look like. They start to come back to where you start to recognize the person that is you. Whether they realized it or not, they have manipulated you to become who you were at the end of this breakup, and a lot of the times it's a stranger to the person that you were. I hope you did enjoy today's video. If you did, please make sure to hit that like button. If you're new here, please make sure to subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.